Hey everybody, this is GGB College Poppers, and we're going to get into college basketball episode of the day, Tuesday editions, right after we go over Monday's game, which was one. We had number 9 West Virginia traveling to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State looked so good in this game until late. They had a 19-point lead heading with about 10 minutes left in the game, and I checked the score, and I'm like, dang, I'm going to get 1.5 points, and I smiled to myself. And then I later came out of the shower. I sat down after I got dressed, and I was like, hey, I'm going to check the score, and you know what freaking happened? They lost by 3. They allowed a 19-point comeback. Well, I got to give credit to West Virginia. That was a hell of a game they played out there today. They had a comeback that I just didn't think was possible when I checked the score, but dang, Oklahoma State, you can't crumble like that. If you really want to beat teams like Oklahoma State, if you really want to beat teams like Kansas, Baylor, Texas, teams like that, teams that are legitimately great. And this isn't a great West Virginia team. This is an overrated West Virginia team, right? You can't play like that. Like, that's something you cannot do and expect to somehow come out on top. You can't expect them to make the playoffs or make March Madness when you play this garbage. You cannot allow a 19-point comeback in any scenario against any team ever. You can't do that. Unless you want to be known as the Falcons or the Chargers, you don't do that. Like, you can't allow it to happen. It's a really bad play on the part of Oklahoma State. You just got to focus. You obviously have the talent to take such a huge lead against a ranked opponent, right? You just need to work harder, make sure that you stay on track, and you don't, look sucky. But let's get into Tuesday's games. There are about 6, so let's get into them real quick. At 6 o'clock, we have NC State traveling to number 19 Clemson. I'd like to point out NC State is undefeated in ACC play, thanks to some really poor Boston College errors. They tried to hand that ball game away. It was very interesting to watch. But NC State traveling to number 19 Clemson. Clemson has one loss in ACC, but that's against a Virginia Tech team that is very, very good right now. They're playing at a high level. The Hokies might be one of my favorites to win it all in the ACC because, I mean, it's weird. I think Clemson and Virginia Tech might be the 2 best teams in the ACC this year. I legitimately think that, mainly because you look at the other teams that are supposed to be great. Yeah, Florida State, Duke, Virginia, right? Those are UNC. Like, those teams aren't very good this year. I mean, Duke's, and they're all mediocre, right? I think Clemson, NC State, Virginia Tech. This is a weird year where I think they're the 3 best teams in the ACC right now. NC State's unfortunately not ranked, and I really think they do deserve a top 25 ranking the way they've been playing. It's going to be interesting. Clemson's only favored by 5 points. I feel like there's a reason why NC State's been playing very good ball as of late. Very good team in the ACC. I'm expecting them to make some noise in the March Madness tournament, and right now they look really good. They're playing really good basketball, so it's going to be interesting. This game's going to be really good. Kansas State traveling to number 18 Texas Tech. Texas Tech sitting at 8-3 on the year. Kansas State sitting at 5-6. The last 6 times Kansas State has traveled to Texas Tech, they've lost. This is an interesting matchup, though, because Kansas State also has not looked very good. Just lost to TCU, but TCU's looking like a pretty good team this year, so it's going to be interesting how that works out in the Big 12 with TCU. I'm interested. There's a big game today for TCU that I'm going to get to later, but TCU has a chance to prove themselves that they're very good. Kansas State played a close game against them, and it's really interesting. They always play close games against everyone, except for, like, Baylor. They've played a close game with every single team they've played. So, I don't know. I expect it's possible another close one here. I think Kansas State is a mediocre team. Like, everyone makes it out like they're horrible, but, like, this Texas Tech team, everyone just keeps, like, glossing over the fact they do not have a good win on the year. Like, their losses are reasonable. I mean, not really. They just got crushed by Oklahoma. Never mind. Oklahoma State beat them in overtime. It's not a great loss, but it's also reasonable. They also lost to Houston, a very good team from the American. So their losses aren't horrible, but they have no wins that I'm like, that's a nice win. No, there's no wins I can say that for. It's going to be interesting. I think Kansas State has a chance to keep this a close ball game. I definitely think it's going to be a good game. So at 7 o'clock we have Iowa State, which is sitting 2-5 on the year, traveling to Texas 8-1. So it's looking like Iowa State's going to be bottom of the conference right now, with Kansas State barely being a little bit better than them. And then you have probably about 8 teams that you're going to really consider for playoff contention in the Big 12, right? Iowa State has not been playing well, although they've played some weird games. Actually, I'm going to take that back. Iowa State played tremendously well against Baylor. If they can just put a full game together, because it always seems like they come just short. They almost beat West Virginia. They almost beat Baylor. I wonder if this is going to go in the almost section but Texas has beaten Iowa State the last 5 times they've played at home. Texas is playing at a very high level right now, number 4 in the entire country. I don't know if any Texas fans are watching this video. I'm a Texas fan. I've been kind of watching their basketball team all year. I did not expect us to get in the top 4. Starting the year, I'm like, if we're top 25 all year long, top 15, I'm going to be happy. I never expected us to get top 4, to be honest. I never expected us to get this high. Villanova, it's Baylor, it's Gonzaga, Baylor, Villanova, us. It's amazing that we're all the way here. Shaka Smart, props to him. He's put together fantastic teams. People wanted to fire him last year. It would have been interesting if we didn't make the March Madness tournament last year, but unfortunately, I never thought I was going to say this, but luckily March Madness was canceled. That's the only lucky thing about March Madness, is that Shaka Smart got to keep his job, and he got to get Texas to this spot this year. Everyone expected, everyone expected Baylor, Kansas to be better than them, West Virginia, Texas Tech. We were projected to be like the 5th best team in the Big 12, which isn't an indictment on us. Big 12 is a very, very good conference, but it's looking like we're the 2nd best team in the Big 12 right now. That's what we're sitting at. We have 1 loss in the year. We're sitting at an 8-1 record, and that's a 4-point loss to Villanova. We've played. That was the only game we've lost so far. Texas has played a phenomenal year. They've played some really good teams, including teams like Indiana. I don't remember. We started out with Davidson. Is a pretty good team, an under the radar team. We beat them. So there are some good basketball teams that we've beaten this year. It's gonna be very interesting. I think Texas is gonna absolutely crush Iowa State at home, but we'll see. 8 o'clock, we have number 15 Rutgers traveling to number 23 Michigan State. Rutgers is favored by 1 point. By the way, Michigan State's still ranked. I thought that was going to be a little bit but they made it into the top 25. So it's going to be interesting. Rutgers is coming off a sad loss at home to Iowa. Pretty heartbreaking, because they really could have had that game. But it shows you how good of a Rutgers team this is this year. Able to play a close game against Iowa. That does not happen very often. Not many teams can do that. Luka Garza is a legitimate threat to be the number 1 pick this year. The fact that Rutgers was able to do that is really amazing, and it's impressive. The Rutgers turnaround has been amazing to watch the past 2 years. Michigan State, Tom Izzo, they won against Nebraska. I don't know what else they've really done. They've really not done anything to impress me that much. It just straight off the bat, Nebraska's win was just not that impressive, but they got it. I thought that they might have fallen out of the top 25, but just the Michigan State's name is enough to warrant staying in the top 25. It's going to be interesting, because this is a game that the kind of Michigan State needs to win. They haven't had a significant Big Ten win. As I said before, only Big Ten win is against Nebraska. I think right now sitting at 1-3 in Big Ten play. Kind of need this one. Sitting at a 7-3 record. Rutgers sitting at 7-2, but also looking very good, hoping to push their way into top 10 this week. So it's going to be interesting. Lots to play for both teams. Rutgers is favored by 1, but I think this is going to be a very closely matched up on ESPN2. Number 13, Missouri is traveling to Mississippi State. Missouri's favored by 2.5 points, which does not happen very often when Missouri is playing Mississippi State. The last 5 SEC trips to Mississippi State has ended in a loss for Missouri. Normally does not travel well to Mississippi State, which is just a statement on how really good this Missouri team is this year. They crushed Arkansas on Saturday, which is not something that I really expected. Missouri Arkansas was looking like a good team, undefeated up until that point, and Missouri just kind of proved who the second best team in the SEC was. Although they have a chance to prove themselves as the best team in the SEC after that weird loss to Alabama for Tennessee. Even though they got crushed by Tennessee last week, I think Missouri went against a pretty good Mississippi State team, although this is a Mississippi State team that gave Kentucky their first win of the year. It's going to be interesting. I think Mississippi State has a serious shot of pulling off this upset. The Bulldogs are not a horrible team this year. A lot of people forget about them in the SEC, mainly because you focus on teams like Kentucky sucking. It doesn't happen very often, but they're not a very good team this year. Mississippi State just gave them the first win, which I hope is not going to get Kentucky going, but you have Kentucky reminds me a lot of UNC last year. They have a lot of young players, which means I think they might miss the tournament this year. But I think they'll have a solid roster for next year. But Missouri's been good. Tennessee's been really good. Everyone focuses on Florida coming back because they have not lost one game in the SEC yet. Only lost this to a pretty good Florida State team without their best player getting hurt midway through the game. So Florida's that's on a lot of people's radars. Arkansas was undefeated heading into this week, so also on a lot of people's radars in the SEC. And then Texas A&M's starting to become a decent team in the SEC. I don't know about LSU again. I don't have much faith in LSU. Alabama pulled off a huge upset, but Mississippi State's a team that not a lot of people mention, mainly because it's Mississippi State, not known. They're normally March Madness team, which is why it's weird that no one gives them any props. But Mississippi State is quietly having a pretty good season, sitting at. They're looking really good this year. It's going to be interesting. I think that Mississippi State, the Bulldogs, have a serious shot of pulling off this upset. So at 9 o'clock, we final game of the day. We have number 6 Kansas. Traveling to TCU. Last time we saw Kansas, they had their worst loss ever. I think in their home stadium. Might be under Bill Self, but it was amazing. Texas absolutely crushed them. I think it was the game that Jayhawks might have been sleeping in, but really it was their biggest test of the year, and they kind of failed. They got an F on that test. TCU just beat Kansas State last week on Sunday. Not like a huge game, not like a really interesting game. Like that proves that TCU's any good. But Kansas has dropped to number 6, and I don't remember the last time a number 6 team was playing an unranked team, and they were only favored by 4.5 points. It's really interesting. I think TCU's been playing well this year, though. But Kansas has defeated TCU in 15 straight meetings. I don't know if that'll end today, but dang if the Horned Frogs aren't looking like a pretty good basketball team recently. They have not looked horrible, and I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. But time for the upset of the day. Drum roll, please. I'm going to pick NC State to upset Clemson. Technically, it's not the lowest spread of the day. If I was going to go lowest spread, there's actually 3 games with a lower spread than this. I could have taken Michigan State over Rutgers, Mississippi State over Missouri, or TCU over Kansas. Actually, Clemson's favored by 5 points, which only teams that are favored by more points are Texas Tech in Texas, right? So the problem is I normally do this like almost every time that I pick against the team that's like the best, like technically lowest spread, right? I'm either right or none of the other upsets happen either. So I'm pretty confident in this one. The thing is, what I look at is what team do I trust the most? Do I trust Michigan State the way they've been playing to beat Rutgers? I don't. Do I trust Mississippi State to beat Missouri the way the Missouri's been playing? I don't. Do I trust TCU to beat Kansas? I really don't. I don't trust TCU to beat Kansas. I don't believe Mississippi State. I don't really trust. I think all these upsets are technically possible, but I'm going team I trust the most to win in a game. If it's a hard fought matchup, I'm gonna put my money on NC State. The Wolfpack has been playing really good basketball this year. 1 loss on the year. They're undefeated in ACC play. We saw it against Boston College. They came up clutch when they needed to. So I don't know. I think it's gonna be really interesting. I think NC State is a very good team, and I think they have the best shot of the day of pulling off an upset. Hey everybody, this is GGV, co-host Pepper saying, adios amigos, and go Wolfpack.